this video, we're going to talk about job evaluation and how you determine the size of a job. Complex jobs with leadership responsibilities are probably bigger, but I am not 100% sure. That's coming up right now. Hi there, I'm Andrea Adams, the host of HR Shop Talk. On the show, you get expert insight into anything that has to do with HR. I encourage you to subscribe to the show or podcast to keep learning from my guests. Today, my guest is Robert Mosley. Robert is a thought leader, and that's probably the best way to describe him. He's won awards for his HR leadership and recently featured on a HBR Top 100 list. And I am delighted to talk to him. Hi, Robert. How are you?
I'm well, although I'm a bit worried by your introduction because you say you talk to smart leaders, and that means I've got to try and pretend to be smart.
Well, you know, our initial conversation led me to believe that this is probably a safe bet. And we're going to talk about job evaluation today, which is such a fundamental piece of HR. And so I'm looking forward to learning about this. So, okay, let's start at the very, very basics. What is job evaluation and why should we be using it in HR?
Okay, so what is job evaluation? I guess I'll start at the end of the pipeline, which is what's the most important thing that HR has to get right? And it's how to pay people, how to reward them for the job they're doing, how to pay them fairly, and how to pay them competitively. But to make those decisions of how much to pay each person, you've got to do it in a consistent and fair way. And part of that decision process is evaluating how big each job is relative to other jobs in the company, because ultimately, the bigger the job, the bigger the salary. But you need something tangible. You need something systematic to determine, is this job of an engineer the same size as a job of an auditor? Or should I pay the engineer more money? Or should I pay the auditor more money? How do I determine a sense of fairness, a sense of equity about who I pay and how much I pay them? And ultimately, the biggest determinant is job size.
Okay. So when we were talking before this, you broke it down into sizing and grading. Can you articulate the difference between those two things?
Yeah, let me share my screen. And I'll share a few PowerPoint slides that will give a flavor of sizing and grading. I'll do it first with a whiteboard. Let's say the biggest job in the company is the CEO, or whatever you call it. And let's say the smallest job in the company might be your office cleaner or something like that. Mm-hmm. And all jobs in the company, from big to small, we're going to score those jobs, give them points. Maybe the CEO is sort of 900 points and the CFO is 680 points and so on. Job evaluation is determining the size of the job. This HR business partner is 466 points big, using some system to determine size. We'll talk about that a bit later. And when we've got the size of a job, we'll probably draw ourselves some lines. Maybe we'll draw a line at 450 points, we'll draw a line at 499 points, and we'll say all jobs between those lines, we're going to pay you roughly the same. And we'll put you in grade 13, and grade 13 will have a pay scale, maybe $60,000 midpoint, maybe $48,000 minimum, maybe $72,000 maximum. And all those jobs in grade 13, the people will be somewhere in that pay scale. Go ahead.
I ask a question? These grades, and these numbers that you've assigned to individual jobs are not affected by the individual doing the job or the market.
Correct. It's job evaluation. What do we want the job to do? Okay. We don't even take into account who the person is.
Right.
We can't show any bias. It
Right.
doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman. It doesn't matter what your race or religion or height or weight is. It's evaluating the job. And every time we draw a line, we create another grade. So job evaluation is the size of the job. And then grading is if I draw a line here and I draw a line here, that might be grade 15. And who knows, we might end up with 10, 12, 16, 20 grades from top to bottom.
Right.
And each grade has a pay scale.
Right.
So this is essentially what job evaluation is. Let me talk a bit briefly about the golden triangle of reward. Where does job evaluation fit in to the bigger picture?
Right.
And for your viewers who are listening or watching today, if they do want to follow up with me in future weeks, here's my email address. This is how you get hold of me, robert@lemon-bit.com. My background, by the way, 37 years in HR, some of it in consulting mood with Hay, with my own company, Lemon Pip, and some of it in corporate mode. Senior Vice President HR for Emirates Airline for 13 years. Head of Global Reward for Travelport out in Atlanta in the States for 3 years. So let's talk about the golden triangle of reward. Job evaluation is really just a stepping stone to rewarding your employees properly. If you're going to attract, retain, and motivate the people you need, you've got to pay them fairly and competitively. You've got to get remuneration right. And by remuneration, the whole package, salary, allowance, bonus, benefits, everything. And that means you've got to know all about the jobs that they're doing. What is each job responsible or accountable for? What does each job contribute to the business? How critical is each role? What are the complexities, the challenges of each job? And what are the skills needed to do each job? The skills, the training, the education, the experience, the qualifications. In other words, the competencies. But you might have a job called customer services executive. You might have 20 people doing that job. Do you pay all 20 people the same? No. Top performers are going to get paid more, and new recruits, trainees, developers are going to be paid less. So you also have to know the people doing the job and how well are they performing? What experience do they have? What goals and objectives do you expect them to achieve? And what competencies? 2 types of competencies. Competencies without an I, the technical skills, and competencies with an I, the behaviors that will make them successful. Jobs are internal within the company. People and performance, your employees, are internal. You've also got to look externally. What are your competitors paying for similar jobs? What do other organizations in Canada or America pay for the type of people that we want to hold on to? And collectively, this is called the golden triangle of reward. And who is going to manage this triangle? Ultimately, HR. So HR need processes to get to understand jobs, such as organization design comes first. Then when we've got the org design, we could look at each job in the org chart and say, what does this job do? Why do we need this job? Job analysis. And the end result of job analysis is a written job description that describes each job. What do we expect each job to do? And we can give that job description to the person doing the job so that they understand what we expect from them. But we can also use that job description to determine the size of the job. What's the job responsible for? What's the job accountable for? What knowledge does it need? What people does it manage? What problems does it solve? What creativity does it come up with? All the factors that are going to be part of a job evaluation system. And we already said that if we've got jobs in the company from big to small, we'll score every job, we'll give every job in the company a size, but then we'll draw lines. And we'll say these jobs are grade 13. these jobs, maybe grade 12, these jobs, maybe grade 14. And we'll put jobs into grades. And the bigger the grade, the bigger the salary. Each grade will have a pay scale.
Right.
The size of the job determines the grade determines the pay scale.
If I might interrupt you just a little second there. So you've determined the grade, but then on top of that, you're going to layer the market considerations and that.
Yeah, understanding the size of job and putting it into the grade is just one leg.
Right.
You then got to get to know the person, what sort of KRAs, KPIs, old-fashioned performance, or what OKRs, what goals or objectives are we asking them to achieve? How do we want them to achieve it? The behaviors, the competencies. This is the foundations of agile performance appraisal, out of which comes performance ratings. And we'll use that rating for the pay review, for the bonus, and that will impact pay. And then, of course, there's the market. What's my company's pay strategy? What am I prepared to pay? Where am I going to get market data from? How do I benchmark? How do I compare my company with other companies? And how do I design my pay scales, my allowances? And that impacts pay.
So it's been a long time since I've been involved in this, but there are methodologies for just determining job size. What are those? And how would someone decide which ones they should be using?
There's more than one way to measure the size of the job. So let me talk about the different methodologies to measure the size of a job. The most famous methodology is called the Hay system of job evaluation, invented by Edward Hay in 1943. And he looks at jobs with three big factors. What's the knowledge needed to do the job? What's the complexities, the challenges, the problem solving in getting the job done? And what's the deliverables, the outputs, the accountabilities? Three big factors, which he then breaks down further into 8 small factors. And we're going to score all of these factors, but ultimately, we're going to put the job into a level 5 up to maybe level 32. Mercer, another consulting company, they've also got a really good job evaluation system. And the end result with Mercer is you put jobs into classes, starting for some odd reason at class 40, going up to the 70s. Towers Watson, they also have a job evaluation system, and they put jobs into global grades. And since no one started at number 1, they start at number 1. Hay level -5 equals Towers Watson global grade. They're very similar. And of course, there's Aon Hewitt as well, who put jobs into links. There's more than one way to measure the size of a job. But ultimately, these systems are very, very similar. They're all looking at similar things. And if you look at these 4 systems, Hay, Mercer, Towers Watson, and Hewitt, they're all very comparable. They're all looking at roughly the same things to determine the size of a job. And that's good news, because if we remind ourselves of that golden triangle of job evaluation and pay, well, when we're looking at jobs, these are the things that are important. Responsibility, accountability, what does the job have to do? Skills, experience, training, qualifications, what are the inputs? What's the knowledge, the skills needed to do the job? And how do we get the job done? Those big factors, accountability, know-how, problem solving, are exactly the 3 factors that we're going to reward and recognize as being important in the job. And so there's 4 really good systems to determine the size of a job. These are the big 4.
Yeah.
And about 65% of companies in the world use the Hay methodology, 15% use Mercer, 10 use Towers, and so on. These are the 4 systems that really count.
There's no question that you have learned something out there. And if you have, subscribe. And what areas of job evaluation do you have questions about? Let us know in the comment section. So for job evaluation and sizing, what inputs do you need to be able to do that well?
You've got to understand the job. If someone came to me and said, Robert, I've got this job called Industrial Safety Inspector, the first thing I want to know is, well, what on earth does it do? And the best way of getting to know what it does is to read the job description.
Right.
To read the different responsibilities, to read the challenges, to read the competencies, to read the recruitment spec. This job of Industrial Safety Inspector must have a degree in mechanical engineering and a minimum of 5 years experience in civil architecture. Because ultimately, we're going to evaluate the different components of a job, the knowledge, the skills, the experience, the supervising people. How big's your team of people? Are you dealing with customers? What are the challenges? Do you have a budget? What's your responsibility? We need to know all those components. And the primary source to get that information is going to be the job description.
So question about the job description. So often job descriptions are out of date. So before you do job evaluation, do you need to be reviewing all your...
It depends what you call out of date. If you write a job description well, it should survive for at least the next 5-6 years.
Okay.
You don't have to update job descriptions every year. If you're sensible when you write the job description, all the numerical bits like the budget, the revenue, the operating cost, you leave that out. You put those into the KPIs in the performance system. And the job description shouldn't really have any numbers in it. And by and large, what a job does last year, this year, next year should stay pretty much the same, unless you're going through a reorganization review. Mm-hmm. So even if the job description is 3, 4, 5 years old, if it still reflects what the job should be doing, that's fine.
Right. Okay. When it comes to actually doing the job evaluation, who should do it?
Okay. So a job description is one thing you need.
Yeah.
But you also need someone that understands the job. And that is going to be a combination of 2 people. It's going to be somebody in HR from human resources who understands jobs, probably someone from the organization design team who also has been trained in job evaluation. But you also need the manager of the job who can talk about that job more eloquently. Because the job description will say so much, but there's always an interpretation that you need from talking to the manager. So who should evaluate the job? The job evaluation specialist within HR, who will either be part of the OD team to understand jobs, or they might be part of the compensation team. Mm-hmm. But they can't just evaluate the job simply by looking at the JD. They need to go and talk to the manager of the job to really make sure that they've understood the job.
I would have thought that was a deficiency of the job description if you needed to go out and ask questions, but apparently not.
Oh, I'd say job descriptions, let's be honest, it's pretty boring writing a job description.
Pretty boring.
And a manager isn't going to put their heart and soul into getting a job description impeccably perfect. They'll do what's called in search of good enough. Mm-hmm. And they'll cut corners. Mm-hmm. But when you come to evaluate the job, you can't afford to cut corners. You've got to know every little nuance, every feature of the job. And that's where a conversation is worth far more than the job description. Yeah. I would actually say the conversation is actually more important than the job description. The job description is there to help you audit that what you've done is legitimate. It's like a paper backup. But frankly, you can evaluate a job without a job description if you had to, as long as you have a good conversation with the manager about what exactly does this job have to do? Why do we need it? What skills are needed? What's it going to achieve? So you could do job evaluation without a JD, but it's better to have the JD just for consistency and audit trail, etc.
Yeah, okay. So once you have done your job evaluation, you've got your job description, you talk to your manager, what's the output? Like, is it just going to be some points and done?
Exactly. It's a bit like measuring the size of someone's neck because you want to decide what shirt will fit them. And if I measure the size of my neck, it's probably 18.5 inches. Yeah, that's a number. But that tells me that I need XL5 as a size.
Mm-hmm.
Job evaluation is going to give job points, but the points then determine the grade. I'll share my screen again, if I may. Job evaluation is going to give the job points. And if we're using the Hay methodology, those points will put the job into a level. If we're using the methodology, it will put the job into a class. If we're using towers, it will put the job into a grade. Let's take the Hay one, for example. There's a standard table. If the job using the Hay methodology is between 192 and 227 points, put it into level 12. If the job is 466 points, anything from 439 to 518, put it into level 17. First, we'll determine the size of the job in points, and based on that, we'll convert it to the level. But we're not there yet, because then we've got to build our internal grades.
We're going to talk about grading in that other episode.
Yes.
Just to close out this conversation on sizing, if you were to leave the audience out there with 2 or 3 pieces of advice about job sizing, what would that be?
My first one would be use a well-known, reputable system. And by well-known, reputable system, there's only 4: Hay, Mercer, Towers, Hewitt. You might think it's expensive. You might think that spending that sort of money on a decent consulting firm is possibly more than you want to spend. But if you look for some other system that has shortcuts in it, you'll never get it truly fair and truly consistent. It's one of those things where you need to get it right. And if that means spending a little bit more money initially, that's part of the investment you've got to make. And the second thing I would say is make sure that HR truly partner with line managers to understand the jobs. Mm. Because the biggest challenge you'll face is the line manager saying, you've put this job in grade 13, but it isn't 13, it's 14. HR, you don't understand the job. You don't realize how difficult the job is. You've underscored it. You've got to get to know the job. You've got to talk the manager's language. You've got to understand what the complexities are. So get yourself a good system and make sure you understand the jobs.
I am going to ask you that question in the next episode about dealing with objections, because there's a lot, because it's the impact of
it's a very emotive subject, because let's say we underscore a job by 10, 15 points, and instead of it going into level 18, it's in level 17.
Yes.
That's instantly a 15 to 20% impact on the salary.
Yes, right.
And that's big. We're playing with employees' lives here.
Yes.
If we underscore a job, some poor employee is going to be underpaid for the work they're doing, and they might struggle to put food on the table. Whereas if we overscore a job, some lucky employee is going to be paid more than is fair or equitable, and other employees will say, I want the same.
Yes.
Before you know it, everybody's salary goes up.
Right.
We're playing with lives. We're playing with money. It's probably the one thing you've got to get right more than anything else in HR. How do you pay people? And if you're going to pay people right, you've got to get the size of the job right.
Yeah, that goes back to, I think, one of the very first points you made in this entire episode. And I think I'll leave this one here. Thanks, Robert. I think a lot of us in HR dread job evaluation, but I really do see how important it is and the sense you made of it. I've done an episode on organization design, which is something Robert also talked about, and that link is right here. Thanks for watching and see you next time.